The first 3 seconds fracture Mark's balance when his phone lights up at 1:14 a.m., its glow cutting through the quiet like a blade. Sarah sleeps beside him, still and warm, unaware that her locked screen flashes with a preview of a message she meant to delete. He hesitates, breath fogging faintly in the cooled room, heart kicking hard against his ribs as a faint memory rises. Her laugh earlier that day, a little too bright, her hand lingering on her phone, a pause she thought he didn't catch. Outside, rain taps the window in soft, uneven rhythms, each drop sounding like a warning. The message isn't from him, and the contact name doesn't match what she claimed. A question trembles through him. If truth shatters trust, why do lies pretend to save it? He checks the phone only to find a thread already open, one that says she was just working late. But if it's only work, why does fear crawl up his spine? And why does a second question echo in his skull? What if betrayal was the only way to survive? Mark slips into the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence as he tries to steady his breath. The tile feels cold under his feet, grounding him in a moment that feels anything but steady. He replays the message thread over and over in his mind, searching for some benign explanation that refuses to form. Every detail presses against him. The late nights, the vague smiles, the sudden need for privacy. He tells himself he shouldn't jump to conclusions, yet the truth nips at him like a shadow that won't detach. If it's nothing, why does everything feel different? And why did Elena look at him so strangely last week when she mentioned Jason's unusual hours? He pours a glass of water but barely tastes it, sensing that something has already started unraveling, and it's only a matter of time before it snaps. Sarah enters the kitchen later that morning, offering a smile that feels practiced, her steps soft, almost cautious. Mark watches her, hearing more in her silence than in her words. She pours coffee, stirring with slow circles as though buying time. The steam twists upward like a secret escaping, and he wonders if she feels the shift too. He wants to ask her everything, demand the truth, but fear knots his throat. Confrontation would change them forever, and he's not ready for that kind of fracture. Instead, he asks about her schedule, listening for tremors in her voice. She answers smoothly, too smoothly, and the lie beneath it whispers like wind slipping under a door. Somewhere in that space, dread plants itself, refusing to loosen. Later that day, Mark sits alone in his car outside the office, engine off, listening to the faint ticking of cooling metal. He rehearses what he'll say if he runs into Jason, though every version feels too controlled or too explosive. The truth is, he doesn't know what he wants. Confirmation or denial, pain or clarity. His chest feels tight, breath uneven as he watches employees filter in through the glass doors. He imagines Jason walking inside with the same easy confidence Mark once admired. The idea that this man might be part of the fracture in his marriage churns something bitter inside him. Still, part of him clings to hope. Maybe Elena misread things. Maybe the messages meant nothing. Maybe he's wrong. But what if he's not? When Mark finally steps inside the building, he spots Elena waiting near the elevator, arms folded, eyes distant. It's as if she's been expecting him. She gives a small nod, inviting him into a conversation neither of them ever wanted. Her voice is low, steady, and edged with something like resignation. She tells him something isn't right with Jason lately, something she can't explain but can't ignore. The way he hides his phone, the sudden meetings, the late returns. Each word sinks into Mark like a weight, confirming the fear sitting quietly in his chest since the night before. They stand together in uneasy silence as the elevator dings open, both wondering the same thing. How deep does this go? And who will it break first? Mark and Elena step outside the building, the early afternoon sun hitting them with a sharpness that feels almost accusatory. They stand near a concrete planter, pretending to be two coworkers casually talking, though their hearts thrum with quiet panic. Elena recounts moments she tried to explain away, Jason's constant checking of his phone, the private smiles he gave to someone unseen, the sudden care he took with his appearance. Mark listens, feeling a deepening sense of betrayal rooting itself inside him. He remembers Sarah's sudden glow after work, the long showers, the late-night whispers she thought were unheard. Elena's voice trembles only once, but that single break tells him everything. She's just as frightened as he is. The weight of their shared suspicion tightens the space between them, forming a fragile alliance built on fear. Mark wonders if the truth they're chasing will destroy 4 lives instead of 2, and whether knowing is worth the burn. Mark returns home earlier than usual and finds the house too still, too carefully arranged, as if someone tried to mask the morning's tension with order. Sarah is in the living room sorting papers, offering him a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. He senses her studying him in return, trying to read whether he suspects something. The silence between them has weight thick enough to bend. She asks about work, and he answers with vague phrases, watching the way she shifts her gaze, how her hands never quite stop moving. He wants to confront her, to force the truth out before it slips deeper into hiding, but the fragile calm keeps him frozen. She mentions a late project meeting, her voice too casual, and something inside him wrenches. A thought slams into him. The first lie is always soft. It's the second one that scars. Later in the evening, Mark sits alone in his car again, parked outside a quiet cafe where he knows Jason sometimes meets clients. He doesn't fully understand why he's here, whether he hopes to catch something or prove himself wrong. The sky has turned a dull blue-gray, and streetlights flicker to life, casting long reflections across the hood. As he watches the entrance, he rehearses the questions he's terrified to ask. Every passing figure knots his stomach, each possible face of betrayal. He thinks of Sarah's soft assurances, her laughter with Jason during team outings, the way Jason always seemed to include her in conversations, subtle but constant. He wonders if emotional betrayal starts long before the first lie, and as the minutes drag on, he begins to fear something even darker, that he has already lost her, and he's only now catching up to the truth. Jason eventually appears, walking briskly toward the cafe, phone in hand, scanning messages with a focus that twists Mark's stomach. He watches Jason's posture, confident, relaxed, untouched by suspicion. Mark feels a surge of anger mixed with something far more painful, envy for the calm ignorance Jason seems to live in. When a shadowy figure steps from a car near Jason, Mark leans forward, pulse quickening. But it's only another coworker. Still, the moment shakes him. He questions whether he's becoming someone he won't recognize, driven by fear, fueled by doubt, chasing ghosts because the truth feels just out of reach. He grips the steering wheel, hearing his own breath louder than the passing traffic. He wonders if he should confront Jason right now or walk away before he spirals deeper. But walking away feels like surrender, and surrender tastes too much like defeat. Unable to shake the dread, Mark drives to a nearby overlook, where the city stretches out beneath him in a sprawl of fractured light. The quiet allows his thoughts to spill freely, unfiltered by a distraction. He thinks about the vows he made, the life he built with Sarah, the small moments they once held so tightly, now slipping like sand between fingers. The fear of losing her feels heavier than anger, heavier than betrayal itself. He wonders if love can survive secrets, or if secrets slowly drain the color from every good memory until nothing remains. As he looks over the glowing horizon, a single terrifying idea settles in. Maybe Sarah and Jason didn't fall into something. They walked into it. And if that's true, he wonders, where does that leave him? Standing alone in the ruins, or about to light a match of his own? Mark returns home late, stepping inside with the quiet caution of someone unsure what version of reality he'll face this time. The living room sits dimly lit, the only glow coming from a lamp Sarah left on, casting a soft cone of light across the carpet. She's on the couch, blanket draped over her legs, pretending to read, but clearly waiting for him. Their eyes meet, and the tension between them feels almost physical, like a wire pulled tight, ready to snap with the slightest pressure. She asks where he's been, her tone casual, but the undertone unmistakable. He answers vaguely, noticing how she clutches her book a little too firmly. It hits him then. She's scared he knows something, and she's trying to gauge how much. The silence that follows stretches long enough to expose every hidden fear neither of them will name. He wonders if the moment to confront her is slipping away, or if this fragile pause is the last breath before the storm finally breaks. The next morning, Mark wakes early, restless, unable to shake the weight pressing against his chest. He steps outside to clear his head, walking slowly down the neighborhood street as dawn curls pale light around him. The cool air steadies his breath, but the unease clings stubbornly, refusing to lift. He replays every conversation with Sarah during the last few weeks, trying to pinpoint when her distance started. Each memory feels like a puzzle piece that no longer fits. His phone buzzes, Elena sending a brief message asking if he's free to talk later. The simplicity of it carries urgency, like she's discovered something but hasn't yet decided how to say it. Mark pockets the phone and keeps walking, feeling as though he's drifting further from the life he once recognized. With each step, one question grows louder. Is he searching for answers, or bracing for the moment they finally find him? Later that day, Mark and Elena meet at a small park near the office, choosing a bench tucked beneath a line of autumn trees, whose leaves rustle with each passing breeze. Elena seems more composed than before, but her eyes reveal exhaustion, the kind born from weeks of doubt and sleepless nights. She tells him she found a receipt in Jason's jacket from a restaurant he claimed he never visited. Mark listens, feeling the ground beneath him subtly shift, as if the truth were pulling them both toward something unavoidable. Elena admits she's afraid of confirming her worst fears, yet more terrified of pretending nothing is happening. Mark feels the sting of recognition, their stories mirroring each other with uncanny precision. They sit in silence afterward, two people suspended in shared uncertainty, wondering how long a marriage can hold when trust has already begun to crumble. Mark drives back to the office afterward, but instead of returning to work, he parks a block away and sits quietly, letting the hum of distant traffic settle around him. His thoughts spiral, twisting between suspicion and self-doubt. He wonders if he misread everything, if fear has reshaped his perspective into something darker than the truth. Yet, the look in Elena's eyes, the trembling in her voice when she mentioned the receipt, continues to echo. He imagines Sarah laughing with Jason during late meetings, imagines secrets traded in quiet corners, imagines the possibility that love is slowly being redirected away from him. He closes his eyes, gripping the steering wheel as if holding on to something slipping from his grasp. He needs clarity, needs proof, but fears what he'll do with it once he finds it. The truth feels both urgent and unbearable. As evening settles in, Mark returns home to find Sarah in the kitchen preparing dinner, humming softly as though trying to craft a version of normalcy between them. The air fills with the scent of sautéed vegetables, yet beneath the domestic calm lies something fragile and trembling. He watches her move around the counter with practiced ease, noticing the way her smile falters when she thinks he isn't looking. When he steps closer, she startles slightly, covering it with a forced laugh. They talk about small things, mundane conversations that feel strangely heavy. Mark wants to break the illusion, to demand honesty, but the fear of what she might reveal holds him back. He wonders whether the truth is already drifting around them, unspoken, yet unmistakable, waiting for one of them to finally reach out and touch it. The next morning unfolds under a gray sky, the kind that makes the world feel quieter than usual, as if even the air is hesitant to disturb the tension lingering in the Ellison home. Mark sits at the dining table staring into a mug of coffee gone cold, replaying moments of the past weeks with a clarity that feels almost cruel. Sarah moves around the kitchen with a careful slowness, placing dishes away, wiping counters already clean, each motion almost to control. He senses the distance between them stretching wider, pulled by truths neither will speak aloud. She finally asks if something is wrong, her voice soft, edges frayed. He tries to answer, but the words collapse before they reach his lips. Instead, they fall into a silence that says everything. He realizes then that their marriage is shifting like ground loosening beneath them, and unless something changes, one more unanswered question might be the final break. Later at work, Mark tries to focus on spreadsheets and emails, but his thoughts churn relentlessly. Every notification on his phone sounds sharper than usual, each buzz igniting a surge of anxiety that tightens his chest. He keeps imagining Sarah meeting Jason behind closed doors, exchanging glances imbued with secrets he was never meant to uncover. He tells himself he's being paranoid, but the certainty in Elena's eyes the day before refuses to fade. When Jason passes by his desk with a casual nod, something inside Mark twists. Jason's calmness feels rehearsed, almost strategic, as if he knows Mark is watching but refuses to acknowledge it. Mark grips the edge of his desk, fighting the urge to confront him right then. He wonders how long a lie can sit in plain sight before it finally bursts open, flooding everything with the truth. During his lunch break, Mark meets Elena again, this time in a quiet corner of the parking garage where the dim shadows feel safer than daylight. She looks shaken, holding her phone tightly, as though it's the only thing keeping her steady. She tells him she found a second receipt. Same restaurant, different night. And now she can't explain it away. Her voice breaks when she admits she's terrified of confirming what she already suspects. Mark listens, feeling the hollow ache in his chest deepen. Because her fear mirrors his too perfectly. They stand there, surrounded by the distant echo of car engines, two people bound together by the unraveling threads of their marriages. Elena shows him the receipt, and he feels the weight of undeniable evidence pressed down on him. He wonders whether knowing the truth will help them heal, or only reveal wounds they can never close. That evening, Mark drives home slowly, each red light stretching longer than the one before, giving him more time to rehearse a conversation he still isn't ready for. His thoughts bounce between anger and heartbreak, settling into a numbing mix of both. When he pulls into the driveway, he spots Sarah through the living room window, sitting on the couch with her phone in hand, brows drawn slightly as she types. He hesitates before going in, watching her silhouette framed by the warm glow inside. For a moment he sees the woman he fell in love with, her softness, her warmth, her gentle focus. Then the image blurs, replaced by doubt crawling over everything she does. He steps out of the car, knowing that the space between truth and assumption is shrinking fast, and once he crosses it, there's no return. When Mark finally enters the house, Sarah looks up, startled as though she didn't expect him so soon. She locks her phone instinctively, the faint click of the case snapping shut louder than it should be. He notices the tension in her shoulders, the guarded lift of her chin as she asks about his day. They move through the conversation with careful politeness, each word chosen like stepping across thin ice. Mark studies her face, searching for signs of guilt, fear, or anything that might point toward the truth. But her expression remains unreadable. A practiced mask he can't penetrate. The silence between them grows until he feels it pressing on his chest. He realizes that no matter how hard he tries, they can't keep circling the truth forever. Eventually, one of them will break the silence, and he fears it will shatter everything. The next morning arrives heavy and colorless, as if even the sun refuses to commit fully to the day ahead. Mark wakes before Sarah, lying still beside her while staring at the faint cracks in the ceiling, each one branching like the fractures spreading through their marriage. He listens to her quiet breathing, steady and soft, wondering how long she's been living with secrets she hasn't shared. A part of him longs to reach out and hold her, to pretend that everything is still whole, But another part fears touching her, would only confirm how distant she's become. When she finally stirs, offering him a tired smile, he tries to return it, but feels the strain behind it. She suggests making breakfast, her voice hopeful but thin, and he nods, unsure how to navigate the fragile kindness she's offering. He follows her to the kitchen, knowing that something between them is shifting toward a breaking point they can no longer postpone. As they prepare breakfast together, the kitchen fills with the scent of toasted bread and warm eggs. But beneath the domestic rhythm lies an unmistakable tension. Mark moves through the motions mechanically, trying to understand whether Sarah's gentle touches on his arm and her small attempts at conversation are signs of guilt, love, or a desperate attempt to maintain control. She asks about his day ahead, her tone carefully light, too polished. He answers, watching her closely, noticing how she avoids holding his gaze for more than a second. Each detail feels like a clue he can't quite decipher. For a moment, he imagines telling her everything. What he saw, what he suspects, the fear that's been eating at him. But the words anchor themselves in his chest. He wonders whether love is supposed to feel this fragile, like a glass about to crack under the slightest pressure. Later that afternoon, Mark meets Elena again, this time at a quiet lakeside path where the breeze carries a faint chill and fallen leaves gather in swirling circles. Elena looks exhausted, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness, her voice shaky as she recounts a conversation Jason had the night before. Something about unfinished business and needing clarity. She admits she followed him to the garage but lost her nerve before confronting him. Mark feels a surge of empathy. He knows too well the paralyzing fear of demanding truth. They sit on a bench facing the water, watching ripples distort the reflection of the clouds overhead. She asks him whether he thinks their spouses are together, and he hesitates, the weight of his answer too heavy to voice. In that silence, both of them understand that the truth is no longer hiding. It's preparing to reveal itself. When Mark returns home, the house is silent, except for the faint ticking of the hallway clock. Sarah's shoes sit neatly by the door, but she is nowhere in sight. He calls her name once, then again, feeling a tightness coil in his stomach. He finds her in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, with her hands clasped tightly, as if bracing herself for something inevitable. The moment he enters, she lifts her head, and the look in her eyes is a mixture of fear and resolve. She tells him they need to talk, words that slice through him with brutal clarity. His pulse quickens, breath uneven, knowing the conversation he's been dreading is finally here. She gestures for him to sit beside her, but he remains standing, unable to trust his body not to collapse under the weight of what's coming. The silence between them feels like the last breath before impact. Sarah finally speaks, her voice trembling as she admits things haven't been right between them for a long time. She says she feels lost, overwhelmed, confused about where she stands in their marriage. Mark listens, feeling each word strike like a blow. She swears she hasn't done anything wrong, but her eyes drift away as she speaks, and he feels truth slipping through the gaps in her phrasing. He asks her if there's someone else, his voice low, almost breaking. She hesitates, just a flicker, but it's enough to confirm his deepest fear. She insists she just needed support, attention, connection, things she felt slipping with him. Mark's chest tightens with guilt and suspicion colliding. They sit in a heavy silence before she whispers that she never meant to hurt him. He wonders if intentions matter when the damage is already unfolding. Mark leaves the bedroom after their painful conversation, stepping into the hallway as if crossing a threshold into a version of his life he barely recognizes. The house feels heavier, as though the walls themselves have absorbed all the tension and are now exhaling it back into the air. He walks into the living room, lowering himself onto the couch, trying to breathe through the chaos swirling in his mind. Sarah stays in the bedroom, the muffled sound of her quiet sobs drifting through the cracked door. He presses his palms together, staring at the floor, trying to piece together what her hesitation meant. Whether it was guilt, confusion, or something far more final, he wonders how two people who once moved so easily around each other could now feel like strangers navigating a minefield. The weight of everything unsaid presses on him, and for the first time he wonders whether the truth will bring closure or only carve deeper wounds. Later, Mark steps outside for air, the night cool against his skin as he leans against the railing of the porch. Streetlights flicker in the distance, casting long shadows that stretch across the quiet neighborhood. He scrolls through his phone, reading Elena's earlier messages again, each one tinged with the same fear he now carries. She had asked if he discovered anything new, if Sarah had said something that hinted at the truth. He considers calling her but hesitates, feeling the weight of involving someone else in a mess already too tangled. As he looks at the dim street, he thinks about the years he spent believing his marriage was sturdy, grounded, unshakable. Now every memory feels fragile, like glass cracking beneath pressure. He wonders whether he should fight for what they had or accept that things have already shifted beyond repair. The silence around him offers no answers. The next day, Mark meets Elena again at a small cafe tucked near the edge of town, a quiet place with fogged windows and soft music playing faintly. She tells him she finally confronted Jason the night before. He denied everything, but she could see the panic flicker in his eyes. The denial stung more than if he had admitted the truth. Mark listens closely, feeling his own frustration mirror hers. He tells her about his conversation with Sarah, how her hesitation felt like an admission she wasn't ready to voice. They sit facing each other, two people clinging to the last frayed threads of certainty. Elena leans forward, voice trembling as she asks what they're supposed to do now. Mark doesn't know how to answer, realizing neither of them has a map for this kind of heartbreak. All they have is fear, suspicion, and a truth that refuses to stay buried. After leaving the cafe, Mark drives aimlessly, letting the road decide his direction. His thoughts churn with relentless intensity, weaving between anger, confusion, and a hollow kind of sorrow that feels heavier than anything he's carried before. He pulls into an empty parking lot overlooking a strip of forest, turning off the engine and letting the quiet settle. He thinks about Sarah's trembling voice, Elena's desperation, Jason's ambiguous confidence. He realizes every truth they're chasing is wrapped in layers of fear and pride, and no one is willing to tear through those layers yet. He wonders what breaking point looks like, whether it's a confession, a confrontation, or the moment someone finally stops pretending. The sky darkens slowly, clouds gathering like a storm preparing to break. He closes his eyes, trying to steady himself, knowing something must happen soon or the unspoken will crush them all. That evening, as Mark returns home, Sarah sits at the dining table with her laptop open but untouched, fingers resting lightly on the keyboard. She looks up when he enters, her eyes clouded with a mix of worry and resolve. She tells him she's been thinking all day, that the distance between them has become unbearable. Her voice quivers as she admits she doesn't know how they reached this point, only that they can't keep pretending everything is fine. Mark listens silently, the words hitting him in slow, heavy waves. She says she wants to talk honestly, without fear, without deflection, and invites him to sit. He hesitates, feeling his pulse thicken, knowing this conversation may reveal truths he's both desperate for and terrified of. He pulls out a chair, lowering himself into it as she closes her laptop with trembling hands. The room feels still, suspended, as though everything they've avoided is about to surface. The room feels impossibly still as Mark sits across from Sarah, the quiet surrounding them too charged to ignore. She folds her hands together, hesitating before she finally starts to speak. She tells him she never planned for any of this, that the distance between them grew slowly, almost invisibly, until she didn't know how to reach back. Her voice wavers as she explains how loneliness crept into her life, even while he was right beside her. Mark listens, torn between empathy and the raw sting of betrayal. She insists she didn't cross any lines with Jason, but admits she leaned on him emotionally in ways she should have leaned on her husband. The honesty hits like a blow, leaving Mark breathless. He wants to ask if she still feels connected to Jason, but fear holds him still. The truth they finally stepped into feels fragile, and he realizes whatever happens next will set the course for everything that remains of them. Mark tells her he feels like the ground has been shifting beneath them for months, leaving him constantly unsure of what's real. His voice breaks slightly as he admits he's been terrified of losing her, terrified of facing the truth, terrified of being the one who wasn't enough. Sarah reaches across the table instinctively, but stops halfway, unsure if she's allowed that closeness anymore. She apologizes, tears gathering but not yet falling, insisting she should have spoken to him long before everything spiraled. The vulnerability in her voice brings an ache to his chest, but the pain of what has been left unsaid still lingers between them like a thin blade. Mark wonders if they can rebuild something when trust has been fractured so deeply, or if the love they once shared has been stretched too far to return to its shape. The moment feels like standing at the edge of a precipice, waiting for one of them to step forward first. The conversation stretches late into the night, shifting from hurt to confession to the hollow spaces between them. Mark eventually asks Sarah directly about Jason, the question hanging heavy in the air. She closes her eyes before answering, explaining that Jason made her feel noticed during a time she felt invisible at home. She insists again that nothing physical ever happened, but admits she allowed the emotional closeness to grow because it filled a void she didn't know how to address with Mark. The honesty cuts deep, but so does the realization that their disconnect existed long before Jason ever stepped into the picture. Mark feels anger, sorrow, and relief, twisting together inside him, an impossible blend. He tells her he wishes she had come to him instead of letting someone else fill the gap. She nods through quiet tears, whispering that she wishes she had too. The weight of everything finally spoken settles over them like a heavy dusk. Later, Mark steps outside for air, needing space to breathe through the storm of emotions. He stands under the porch light, staring into the quiet street, trying to grasp the full scope of what he and Sarah have just unpacked. His mind drifts to Elena, wondering how she and Jason are navigating their own unraveling. Part of him wants to call her, to share that he finally has answers, but he knows her journey is separate from his now. He exhales slowly, feeling an unfamiliar mixture of grief and clarity settling inside him. The night air cools his skin, grounding him, reminding him that this is the moment life shifts, not ends. Whether he and Sarah rebuild or part ways, the truth is now out in the open, and somehow he feels lighter, even as the sadness clings to him like mist. He steps back toward the door, ready to face what comes next. Mark returns inside to find Sarah sitting quietly on the couch, knees drawn close, her expression uncertain but hopeful. He joins her, leaving a small space between them, neither pushing nor retreating. She whispers that she wants to try, really try, to fix what's broken, but she understands if he can't. Her voice trembles with honesty, not fear. Mark takes a long breath, feeling the weight of choice pressing against his chest. He thinks about the years they've shared, the dreams they built, the moments that once defined them. He realizes he doesn't want to lose her, not without fighting for the version of them that still exists beneath the hurt. He tells her they can try, but it will take time, honesty, and a level of vulnerability they both abandoned long ago. She nods, tears falling freely now, and he finally reaches for her hand. The moment is small, fragile, but it feels like the first step towards something real again.